Elect Hakainde Hichilema says change has come to Zambia. Hichilema made the comments shortly after his predecessor Edgar Lungu conceded defeat in the 12th of August presidential polls. The business tycoon secured 2.8 million votes against Lungu's 1.8 million. The elections were Hichilema's sixth attempt to clinch the presidency. The 59-year-old pledged to foster a better democracy and respect the rule of law and human rights.
My fellow citizens, citizens of Zambia, it is with great honor, humility, gratitude that I stand before you today to say change is here. Zambia, therefore, has prevailed. This victory does not belong to HS to Bali. This victory belongs to the men and women of Zambia, especially the youth. Especially the youth.
Right, for more on this, I'm joined now by the Chairperson of the African Diaspora Forum, Dr. Vusumuzi Sibanda. Dr. Sibanda, good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight on In Focus.
Good evening, and good evening to the listeners, and thank you for inviting me.
Now, in his debut address to the nation, Hakainde Hichilema promises a move away from a brutal regime to a better democracy. Is this an empty promise, or is there substance to this?
Well, look, we all hope that this is going to be, exactly what he's promising, because we've had a lot of, people, when they get to be elected, or when they are president-elect, or when they're campaigning, promising heaven on earth, to their supporters. And what we have seen, has turned out to be something, completely different. But indeed, we are hoping that maybe his promises will come true, but only time can tell.
He promises to be a president for all Zimbabweans. Now, this is a man, I suppose, 6 times trying to get into that position. At some point, the opposition actually put him behind bars. Do you think he would want to get back at those who have really been a sore point for him for the last 6 years?
Well, I think, yes, for all the Zambians. Indeed, one hopes that, after his experience, he understands that what repression, what acts, can be looked at as non-democratic actions. And hopefully, if he has learned a lesson, I think you can see now when we look at the outgoing president, President Lungu, after saying that the election was stolen, it was not free and fair, and then coming to concede, and after the arrests and the kind of tribulation that he has put, President-elect, Hichilema in, maybe he could also learn a lesson to realize that as much as those that are like, outgoing president could be, fearing for their lives, that what is it that he's going to do? We have seen this in 1991, in Zambia before, after President Kaunda left, when laws were changed, that completely barred President Kenneth Kaunda from ever contesting, elections in that country. So we have seen, people that, get into office and they change laws to try and bar other people and become, vindictive. And we can all hope that this is not going to be the situation.
Now, of course, this is a historic victory in a sense that 1 million more people actually voted for him. And one asked the question, had the gap not been that big, would have President Lungu conceded this easily?
Well, probably not, because obviously I think, as we all know, that immediately, when votes started trickling and coming in, he was very, strongly condemning, the violence that led to about, I think about 2 aides or so, from his party that were killed, and that, the election was stolen. And I think, the fact that, the margin was so huge is what really silenced him, because at the end of the day, I think, whatever that he would have said would not really have amounted to anything, because the numbers, as people always say, don't really, lie.
The democratic ideals that President-elect Hichilema would need to live up to as he comes into office, that, in your view, would certainly bring meaningful change for the people of Zambia?
Well, I think one of the most important things that we're looking at is obviously to realize that, to start with, I think he needs to look at, obviously, his service delivery and what he's going to really do, for the people of Zambia, and to allow, that all appointments, that are obviously going to be done, and institutions that, obviously support democracy, and that should not be seen to be pro-government per se, like, your judiciary are left, to operate independently. I mean, his arrest, for example, would have been seen as, a prosecution that was, showing that there was no distinction, between the different arms of government. And if he can come in and, say, if I'm going to serve one term, I mean, the mere fact that President Lungu, right now, outgoing President Lungu, is going out, having come in 2015 and 2016, without staying that long, does not really say that there's anything wrong for coming in for one term. If you fail and you don't make people happy, you make these mistakes, that are going to make people not to vote for you. Because what outgoing President Lungu did, for example, in arresting and causing all the suffering, to the president-elect, in a way actually campaigned for him and made him very popular. So if he can learn that if he becomes a dictator or tries to use, state institutions to repress, opposition and dissent, he can only decampaign himself, but he becomes a more open-minded person, allow people to, speak openly, and he doesn't make himself a demigod, or a person that is beyond reproach. I think that would actually help, because what we see happening in Africa is that, no one is really allowed to speak, against the president, against, the failures of government. And if you do, in the majority of the cases, that becomes your demise, and you are seen as being unpatriotic, like he was, arrested for treason, merely because his motorcade did not give way, to President Lungu. So in that respect, I think, if we can look at the predicts, of democracy, to say that, the institutions, like your electoral commissions, your judiciary, the National Prosecution Authority, and various institutions, of the state are allowed to operate freely and independently, to the extent that he can rely on executing his duties through his appointment of his cabinet. I think if he can do that and keep his cabinet, strict to the work that they should do, and let the other institutions, of the state function independently, that would be a very great one.
70% turnout at the polls for this particular election, and of course the results showing that this in a sense was a protest vote, where a majority of the young voters who were coming into that voters roll wanted change. What does this say to other countries on the continent, other nations where, for example, the Bobby Wines of this world are contesting elections, wanting change?
Look, there's been a wave. I mean, we cannot turn a blind eye, starting from probably, all the way back to, the Arab Springs and all that. I think what we're seeing, let's look at what just happened, recently in Malawi. And, this is, what is happening in Zambia, and also what happened in Uganda. We're actually getting away, from the rhetoric that we have always had in Africa that says we've got to respect our elders and let our elders lead. Because now we're having, a move and a wave that is appreciating the meritocratic young people that, are diligent, that are not going to wait, for the edging to real lead. Because at the end of the day, we shouldn't really say that it's got anything to do with age, that people can, become meritocratic or they can do quite well. But I think that it should not matter whether someone is young or old. But what we have seen in Africa, which is now seen which is seen as a protest, is that, the talk is now about, young people need to really stand up and come to the podium. Because for a very long time, since the age of the death of colonialism and apartheid, where we had, our African governments taking over, it has always been the old guard that has been seen to be leading. And it has not really done a very good job, because, Africa has not really done so well, yet it has the capacity to do quite well. So what we are seeing, for example, with the young people standing up and going to vote, it shows the frustration, especially because of, unemployment, poverty, educated, many young people that cannot get jobs. We've seen this in South Africa, where the fees must fall, the coming up of, the EFF, breaking away from ANC and all that. So I think it's the edge of the young people at this particular moment. Maybe at some stage it's going to be an edge of, fusion, where the old and young can then now say, we are working together. No one is protesting rather against, the issue of ageism.
Dr. Vusumuzi Sibanda, thanks for coming on. Appreciate your time tonight. He's the chairperson of the African Diaspora Forum.